Welcome to New York. Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline, for having me again at the Caribbean Marketing Week and the Caribbean Marketing sessions here. I'm waiting for my, I hear kind of an echo. Is that, do you hear that too? Yeah? Can I do that with that or no? Okay. Just had to get myself familiar with the equipment here. So once again, thank you so much for having me back at the Caribbean Marketing Conference. It's going to be fun, especially when the technology is going to work, and it seems it's working. Before I start my presentation, I want to share something with you that happened last year, and that was very touching. Last year we had our Phocuswright conference in Florida, and we had the pleasure and honor to have Jose Izquierdo from Puerto Rico Tourism Company as a guest speaker. And he provided a frank assessment of the situation in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane Maria. And he shared his experiences and what was being done with the 1,800 attendees of the conference. Now that conference, Phocuswright, had CEOs of Expedia, Priceline, Trivago, Ctrip, Kayak, TripAdvisor, etc., the big shops. And everybody in the audience was touched what he had or what he shared with us. It was a very special moment, it was special for me, and generally seen as a highlight of the Phocuswright Conference 2017. It also reminded us about the devastating effects of Irma and Maria to quite a number of Caribbean islands, and how vulnerable we are in the travel industry, here in this audience and abroad, for weather-related events, political turmoil, war, acts of terrorism, etc. Now, I think I'm a bit older than most of the people in this audience, although I see some exceptions, fortunately enough. So I'm not really the oldest. But I think that everybody in the audience can remember things like Operation Desert Storm, the dot-com bubble, 9/11, the global financial crisis of 2008, bird flu, SARS, Japanese tsunami 2011, earthquake Haiti 2010, Hurricane Katrina, terrorist events during the Boston Marathon, and things that happened in Paris, Nice, Tunisia, etc. But what's always surprising, or maybe even astonishing, is how resilient the travel industry is. No matter how bad things are, and let's face it, things can be very bad in human loss, in infrastructure, and also for the travel industry here, us in the audience and around the world. But no matter how bad things are, it might take 2-3 years, and we always get over it. We pick ourselves up, and the total market keeps growing year after year. As you can see in this table, there are 4 dips you can see. The first 2 dips are the economic crisis of early 1980s and early 1990s. The third dip is 9/11 and the dot-com bubble, and the fourth one was the housing crisis of 2007, 2008. But what you see is the market keeps growing. After the dip, we just put it off our shoulders, and the market keeps growing. The travel industry is so resilient, it's not even funny. If I were the weather, or if I were a terrorist, I would be really mad if I see this photo. Because it means you are not doing anything. The travel market keeps growing. So people want to travel, and travel more, and it has not changed. What has changed is why people travel and how people travel. So, for example, the destination decision has clearly moved From talking to a travel agent in an actually brick and mortar store. By the way, travel agencies clearly show a comeback, but that's a whole different story that I gladly talk another time about. And from the travel agents, we started to make destination decisions based on what we saw on the laptop of a PC as of the mid-1990s, when the internet, then called the Super Information Highway, came around. And then in 2007, the first iPhone came around, iPhone number 1, 2007. And we actually started to search, shop, and buy travel on a mobile device and a tablet. And right now, even some people make decisions, destination decisions with virtual reality. More about that later. It used to be that we traveled in groups, then individual travel started to become popular. And right now we have all kinds of things, solo travel, multi-generational travel, etc. And travel often was going somewhere to see things and to take a photo and to put those in an album. And you had those trips like, hey, see Brussels, Paris, London, Frankfurt, Marseille and Barcelona in 10 days. And you're on a bus, just taking photos and being miserable with a group. And that has changed, and travel has really become more of an experience. You would like to have an immersive experience in a destination and not just look at the buildings, but also the landscapes and mingle with the locals. So I believe that experiential travel is the challenge and the opportunity for the Caribbean. We can talk about amazing resorts, white beaches, and amazing other things that you can do in the Caribbean that you might be able to do also in other destinations in the world. But it's those special things, those experiences, that I think will be the big opportunity for the Caribbean. And I would like to give some examples. Several years ago, I was in Barbados for a speaking engagement. And we had an amazing time. We had dinners in posh restaurants. We enjoyed the cuisine. We stayed at nice resorts. So we had a wonderful time during that week. But one night, I came across the Secretary General, Hugh Riley, who said, hey, and you and I, we go back many, many years. And he said, hey, Cees, how about if we have dinner tonight? And that was very kind of you. And I said, all right, I'm in. And he said, well, we can go to an elegant restaurant with beautiful china and white linen, or I can give you some local experience. And after all the beautiful things that I had eaten and seen in Barbados, I thought, you know what, I want to have that local experience. So you took me along, and first we had a few beers at a local watering hole, and we chatted, we had a good time, and then he brought me to an area, and I think it was in the south of Barbados, where you had vendors, street vendors, and amazing food was being made right there by the locals, and I feel I was the only foreigner among all those locals that had stories, and I had the most amazing food, great conversation with you and some of the locals. I will never forget that experience. Never. Now, a few years later, I was in St. Kitts. Anybody from St. Kitts here? And also for a speaking engagement. Thank you. Thank you. And before I went to the airport, the tourism office was so kind to arrange for a tour guide. And the tour guide took me and my colleague along and showed us some of the beautiful things that you have on St. Kitts in building, and talked about the culture and history, and it was all great. But on the very moment we came across a bunch of mango trees. Actually, this photo, and it's on the left, It's not a very sharp photo. It's kind of a bad photo actually, but it was the photo that I took of those mango trees. And we got out of the car. Some of the mangoes were on the ground, and we took the mangoes. We sat on the ground, and we started eating those mangoes. And this tour guide started to tell his life story while we were eating the sweetest mangoes I've ever had in my life. I will never forget that moment in St. Kitts. And finally, I was in Trinidad and Tobago. Another. I can go on and on. I mean, I've been basically to all of your destinations. Again, for speaking engagement. And at night, we just took a little stroll. And there was a spontaneous concert of a steel band school. And they played some music, and it was amazing. This was not staged. It was not an official concert. It was just totally spontaneous. And it was amazing. So, and this is my whole point. These are experiences that I will never forget, and nobody would ever forget. Because this makes travel great and inspirational. And I think that could make the Caribbean, or will make the Caribbean, successful. I'm not talking only about your amazing beaches and wonderful resorts, but those particular experiences that you can have. Now, and that's what I want to talk about in the next 15 minutes. So how do you actually talk about it? How can you attract a global audience to your destination? Now, I'm not going to talk about white beaches or amazing jerk chicken, because you guys know far more about that than I do. I would like to talk about all the things, 10 important trends, and they all deal with technology that will affect how the Caribbean DMOs, like the hotels, tour operators, and local tour guides, transportation companies, how can it be successful to a global audience? So 10 trends. I will go very fast through them, and here we go. So 10 digital trends for Caribbean DMOs. 1, the era of online travel is over. Now that's a little bit weird that I say that, because our company has been preaching online travel since 1994. So what do we mean by that? Well, basically, these days, just about every traveler does something online. I'm not talking only about booking, but also the search, the shop, or you have a dream and you're just looking online about where do I want to go next. Now, if you look at the percentage of travelers who do anything trip related online, we currently see that basically 100%. So everything what people do in the search, shop and buy process is online. You can see that counts for India, the UK, the Germany, US, France, and can go on and on. China, Japan and Southeast Asia, there's still a percentage of travelers that do not touch any device in the destination decision process. But everybody else is using the computer. Now, online travel was 0%, and now I'm talking about bookings, was 0% in 1994. And here you can see the top line, the dark blue line, is online travel. And I'm actually now talking about bookings. And the lower one is total travel. And we're talking about change here. So this is not the total, this is the annual change. And you can see, obviously, that in the beginning, in the year 2000 and 2005, that the growth of online travel was always way bigger than the growth of offline travel. Even 2001, it was close to 100%, which is not weird, because if you have nothing, then it's very easy to grow by 100%. And what do you see? And every time online travel was taking a bigger part of the total pie. Yeah? And currently, in 2017, or look at 2020, you see that the growth of the market, which is about 5%, is all online. So what has happened? Online travel actually has become travel. So therefore the term online travel is a bit weird, because online travel is travel. Is that everywhere in the world? Well, we saw already that certain countries are a bit behind. But if you look at the 5% line, that's basically the annual growth of the tourism industry year after year. Sometimes a bit bigger, sometimes a little bit. Overall, 5%. You see that the US, UK, Japan, Italy, and Brazil, they're all at that 5%. So online travel is offline travel, is travel. Only China and Indonesia and India are a bit behind right now. So takeaway, online travel isn't actually over, but it's everything. Digital should be at the center of your marketing strategy and your marketing spend. If your marketing budgets are not for 80% spent on digital, then something is, I would say, not right, and you have to think about that. Number two, there's nothing that can't go digital. I see that the guys from technology are giving me a hand here. So this is 1950. This is American Airlines Reservation Center. As you can see, I don't see wires, I don't see computers, I see a lot of paper and a lot of bored people that are not so happy with their job. And at that time, an executive from American Airlines was sitting on a plane next to an IBM executive. And the American Airlines executive was complaining about the process of booking tickets and processing tickets. And the two guys got into a discussion, and a few years later, the first Sabre global reservation center, reservation computer was made. You see it right here. It's a huge computer. And that was the first machine that actually could automate the ticketing for airlines. Today, Sabre averages 164,000 fares shopped every minute. So we've come quite a long way. So the digitization of everything means the data of everything. And what do you mean by that? I used to be a marketing manager for the Netherlands Board of Tourism in New York. Marketing at that time was trying to be extremely creative. Come up with amazing visuals. Choose the right magazines. Choose the right radio commercials. Can you believe it? And billboards, etc. It was all about creativity and being more creative than somebody else. Right now, when I talk to DMOs, 50% of the marketing staff, they work with analytics, metrics, Google algorithms, etc. So the game is totally different. Marketing has basically become a digital experience. And people that work in marketing better be good at analytics, metrics, and everything digital. Now, there's a good example of what's happening in the industry. In 2016 at the Phocuswright conference, we had a winner on the Best Startup Award, and it was called Beyond Pricing. And what did this company do? They created a tool for individual homeowners that would like to put their property out on HomeAway or Airbnb. And the tool allowed him or her to set the right price. Like what Hilton and Marriott does on a daily basis with yield management, inventory, and historic pricing, competition, particular events. Hilton and Marriott are amazing powerhouses. That they have the technology, we understand. But now there are tools for the smallest of smallest suppliers, and in this case, a supplier of one house, of one room, that can actually do yield management and set the right price for a particular period for his house or his apartment. So technology really comes down, and any entity, big or small, an individual hotel or a DMO or a small tour operator has the tools now to deal in the digital world, and actually has to deal with. If he or she doesn't do it, they will be out of business. The future of our industry will be driven by data, and winners will be determined by data-driven decision making. Every travel company, again, big or small, must become a data company. Is that boring? Maybe, but it is what it is. You have to become a data company. And what decisions are you making today without good data? Number 3, the big story in mobile. We all know how important mobile is. As of 2007, the first iPhone came around, and mobile is front and center. Mobile bookings in 2007 were 0%, obviously. And it has grown, if you look at 2020, to the dark blue and the light blue. Mobile bookings in Europe and the US are currently 30% of total online bookings. So 30% of online bookings are now made on that small device. That's amazing. Even more amazing is if you look at Asia Pacific, because in 2020 about close to 60% of all bookings made in Asia Pacific are made on a mobile device, 60%. Now most of that is in China. If you take all China mobile bookings, let me put it another way. Here you see the total bookings of China, Japan, Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia. If we take the mobile bookings out of the China total market and put it in this graph, then the China mobile bookings are bigger than all other bookings, mobile, online, offline, in Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia. So that's quite amazing how China is leading the world in mobile bookings. In terms of mobile share of online travel by market, so China is 65%, and you can see the US about 28%, 30%. So China is really leading. Now, as we all agree, in the past, inventions were often made in the US and then unfortunately copied in China and further developed in China. When it comes to mobile, that's actually reversed. All inventions in mobile are currently made in China. In the travel industry, they've done some amazing things with mobile, in terms of payment systems, in terms of booking packages on your mobile. Yeah? So it's really China that's leading the industry, and US companies are trying to catch up. So what does that mean? Asia, and especially China, are leading the world in mobile innovation, as China travelers increasingly do everything via mobile. If you're not mobile, you're not ready for China. And if China is not one of your source markets, then still you have to be active and innovative on mobile for any other market in the world. A mobile app is not a mobile strategy. You need a strategy to be successful. Number 4, the big get bigger. Let me see how I'm doing on time. All right. So, do you remember, I'm a bit behind here on my notes, so hang on for 1 second. Here we go. Remember Northwest Airlines, US Airways, AirTran, Virgin America, they all being merged, bought by other airlines. Starwood, Fairmont Raffles, Kimpton Hotels, all being bought. So the big guys are getting bigger and bigger. For the OTAs, that's especially the case. Remember All Orbit, Travelocity, now being part of Expedia. In 2011, the two big ones, Priceline.com, that's now called Booking Holdings, Priceline and Expedia had about 25% of the market. Currently, those two OTAs have 66% of the market. I mean, that's amazing. C-Trip is number 3, coming strong. So basically there are, including C-Trip, 3 OTAs in the world that really determine what's happening in the business. If you look at downloaded apps, hotel apps, the Airbnb app is twice as many times downloaded by travelers than all apps of the most important brands together. So on the right you see Wyndham, Club Carlson, Best Western, Georgia, Hyatt, etc. And you see the number of apps of the hotels being downloaded. Airbnb totally crushes it here. So once again, a big powerhouse here. So what does that mean for the smaller guys, the smaller hotels or DMOs or tour operators? Well, search engine marketing and online ad costs will continue to rise. So that's becoming harder and harder for DMOs and others to compete. Organic search traffic is getting harder and harder. So what's there to do? Well, brands of all segments and sizes need to work smarter with the big brands. If you are a DMO and you're not talking to Expedia or Priceline or Booking.com, that might be a mistake. And it's important to talk to the big guys and to start partnerships. So you have to work smarter with the big brands, and where possible, leverage scale through associations such as the CTO and industry partnerships. That's the way to survive. 5, visual and personal, the future of online travel advertising. We all know that Pinterest, Snapchat and Instagram have seen extraordinary growth in mobile. So we did a study with Bing to see how influential are these platforms in the decision-making process, in the destination decision and otherwise. And look on the left on the blue line. So you see that 65% of travelers find that Snapchat is very or extremely influential in their travel decisions, followed by Instagram, followed by YouTube, by Bing, by Pinterest and Google. And what do travelers remember of those online travel ads? 49% recalled a visual or a picture. 41% recalled a price or deal. Now 40% is pretty good, but it's amazing that a visual or picture is more impactful than a price or a deal. And last on this list is 37% recalled a personalized ad. Ads are usually not recalled very often, but when it's personalized, as you can see, 37% of travelers say, I remember it. So, takeaway, online travel advertising is impactful, and it's possible to cut through the clutter, but you have to keep it visual and personal. Tours and activities. It's actually kind of amazing that we talk so much about hotels and airlines, because tours and activities, that is actually the reason why we go somewhere. It's what you do in destination. And the market is responding to that. The total market of tours and activities in 2017 is 147 billion. That is the third largest. So after air and hotel, now tours and activities is the biggest market. It's bigger than cruise, car and rail combined. And it's growing fast. In 2017, it grew by 8%. Remember, the total market grew by 5%, tours and activities by 8%. And when I talk about tours and activities, I take out shopping and I take out dining. Yeah, so that's the market that I'm talking about. Now, 80% of gross bookings are offline, and that's not surprising, because if you're in destination and you want to rent a bike, you have a family store almost, where they rent 20 bikes and they do not have the financial means to have a reservation system, to do promotions, etc. And so about 80% of providers of tours and activities, the small museums, a tour, a boat tour, a boat rental, blah, 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 yeah, it's not possible to book that online. But that's changing rapidly. In 2011, 11% of tour and activity suppliers used a so-called third-party reservation system. So from all those mom-and-pop stores and etc. that provide tours and activities, 11% had a third-party third-party reservation system, so you could actually reserve. That has grown now to 45%. So what we see is those third parties, and here you see 9 of those companies. Let them talk to those third parties so that everything eventually is becoming bookable and searchable. So tours and activities is why people travel in the first place, but the sector is still very fragmented and has enormous marketing challenges. DMOs can play a critical role in helping local attractions and tours to reach travelers when they get there. 3 more to go. Artificial intelligence and voice-activated search. Now, many of us at home have an Alexa, an Echo, a Siri, or Google Home, and you ask it what time it is and what the weather will be. Which is a bit sad because it's a very sophisticated platform, and a lot of things can be done, but not everything. You could say, hey Siri, or you could say, Alexa, I want to go to Chicago next weekend, get me some flights or get me a hotel. And it will understand you. If you say, I want to go to Jamaica with my family for 2 weeks and in an all-inclusive resort and close to the beach in a period that I'm sure it will be sunny, and etc., etc. Most likely Alexa, smoke will come out of Alexa. He has no idea what to do with that. So we are not there yet. Now, the future of artificial intelligence, a lot of people think about this particular guy and it's scary, and basically it's not, because it's basically the machines what I was just talking about. And certain applications are successful. For example, in hotels, you have already applications where you call the reception desk, you don't get a person, and you say, hey, listen, I'm out of blankets, or I don't have pots anymore for my Nespresso machine, and could you bring some up? And you do not need a person to answer that phone. You really can do that with a bot, with a chatbot. And so what you will see is in the next few years, this will be a big thing for hotels, for airlines, for DMOs, for tours. This will be, when it comes to the travel industry, this is the future of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of interest in these things. Online traveler interest in using a digital assistant to plan travel. You look at the US, UK, especially France and Germany, more than 30% of travelers are interested in a digital assistant to plan travel. Now, the thing is, there's so much talk about it, so much hype, so much expectations, and so much disillusionment at this moment, that we tend to overestimate the effect of the technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. I think that's a very important sentence, and you see that a lot in technology. So you have all the experts and everybody talking about it, and not a lot is happening right now. A lot will happen in the next 4 or 5 years. So don't overestimate this now, but don't underestimate this 4 or 5 years from now. By the way, we at Phocuswright, we published a piece on artificial intelligence travel. If you're interested, let me know, and I will gladly share that with you. Artificial intelligence is not just another tech fad, but the next platform shift. But it's in its very early days, and it will take time. The near-term impact is significantly overhyped, while the long-term implications will be found, if not yet clear. Keep self-educating. 8. Enough already with the millennials. Enough. Now I have 3 myself, 3 children that are millennials, so I can make this statement. Now, don't get me wrong. Millennials, there are a lot, they spend a lot, they travel a lot, so I'm not saying just push them aside. But what I'm saying is that in the next 10, 15 years, why don't you take a better look again at boomers? There might not be as many boomers as millennials. I mean, clearly, there are less boomers than millennials. However, for the boomers, and I'm one of them, the kids are gone, thank God. They've already bought everything. Although my wife believes that's not the case, I believe it's definitely the case. You really have everything at home. We don't need more stuff. So we would like to travel. Now we have the time, we have the money, more or less. So what you see is that boomers, they travel fewer, but they travel longer trips. They do a lot of planning, and they spend more than millennials. So don't be so millennial obsessed that you overlook the big boomer wave ahead. Big boomers are wealthy with time on their hands and planning their travel. Yeah? So the next 10, 15 years, go boomers. Bonus trend, not one of the 10 trends, family travel. Now that the millennials, yes, we are the millennials again. Now that the millennials, the older ones, are actually buying a house, are actually buying a car, and are actually getting married and having children, they will start family travel. And we are convinced, but we don't know yet how, we are convinced that family travel by millennials will be totally different than any of the family travel that we used to in the past. How that's going to work out, we don't know. But this is something to keep in mind, that millennial travel, family travel will happen. It will be different. Please stay tuned. Two more. The next big thing is blockchain. I don't like to talk about blockchain, to be honest with you, because again, there's so much hype, and what you see is what happens during the mid-1990s with the internet, where there was so much talk about internet protocols, the World Wide Web, high-speed internet, and it was all about technology. It was about the plumbing, so to speak, and not so much about what does it mean for me and what does it mean for travelers and consumers. Same with blockchain. On the left you see the plumbing. All the discussion right now happens on the plumbing side and not on the right, on the side where the water comes out of the faucets. Yeah? And that's where the water comes out of the faucet. That is where it impacts travelers and impacts consumers. Yeah? So what do we know about it? Well, it's a distributed or decentralized ledger somewhere in the cloud, where, for example, hotels can put their rates there and consumers can directly book on that ledger without third parties to intervene. It's, as they say, unbreakable and unhackable. An application establishing contracts and transferring value. That's where we are right now. Does it impact you? No. Is it important? Yes. And I think it's, once again, we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. Blockchain will be extremely important and will hit us all. We all will be affected by blockchain. Not today, but yes, in 5 years, 10 years, and it will be pretty significant. We also, Phocuswright published something about blockchain, how and why blockchain can transform the travel industry. If you're interested, let me know and we'll gladly share that with you. As with artificial intelligence, it's very early days for blockchain and it will take time. It's just plumbing that will need investment by travel players to become impactful for travel. But the opportunities are significant, especially for contracting, payments, identity and fraud management. Keep self-educating. Last but not least, how real is virtual reality? So I would like to talk about virtual reality and augmented reality. Just as a reminder, virtual reality is when you have the device on your head and what you see is basically, it looks like you're, for example, you're in Barcelona on a square. You can look up, you can look down, you can turn around, and you see and experience Barcelona right there. Will that take away a trip to Barcelona? Most likely not, but it might have an effect on your destination decision. For example, there are travel agencies that have this device and they show different cruise ships. So you can have a virtual reality trip to several cruise ships and you can decide which cruise ship you wanna use. Augmented reality. Look, augmented reality is when you're actually in Barcelona, you have your mobile phone, and you look at the cathedral, and there's an overlay that tells you when the cathedral was built, when you can visit it, etc. Augmented reality. That is something not for the destination decision, but when you're in destination, it will enhance your experience in destination. We expected 4 years ago, there was a lot of hype, and to be honest with you, it's not really happening right now. And if you look at planned tech investments by travel brands, the big travel brands are investing, as you can see on the left, customer support via messaging, chatbots, artificial intelligence and voice search, not so much virtual reality or augmented reality. Takeaway, augmented reality in fact offers the most near-term opportunity to engage travelers in destinations, while virtual reality may hold promise in influencing the destination decision to begin with. But reach is still limited, and those were the 10 trends that I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.